Welcome to Advocates for Families First webinar today, Improving Safety, Permanency, and Well-Being for LGBTQ youth. We are really happy and very, very pleased and thankful to have Ellen Kahn with us as our presenter. As most folks on the line probably know, Ellen has served as the director of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation's Children, Youth, and Families program since 2005. She has been a great partner with NACAC, North American Council on Adoptable Children, and provides leadership throughout the country and expertise on public education and advocacy efforts to achieve full equality for LGBT families. Today, in particular, we really want to be looking at the issues from the point of view of youth and what it's like for them in the system, how we can better support them, what their permanency needs are, and more. And so, Ellen, if you'll switch to the second slide, I want to welcome people and let them know about how the webinar will work.
Okay. Okay, this is not funny. Hang on, folks. I seem to not be able to move the slides along here.
So sometimes if your cursor is not right on top of the slides, Ellen, it can impact it.
Let's try that. Here we go.
There you go. So you're going to be able to see the webinar slides, everybody, on your computer. You can either listen through your computer speakers or you can switch to use the telephone, whichever works best for you. All of you will be muted throughout the presentation, but certainly we welcome your questions. We encourage your questions. What we would like you to do is go to that question box down at the bottom, type in your question, and we will take some opportunities to answer them as we go along. Ellen, what's your preference? Do you want to stop a couple times in between, or do you want to hold questions to the end?
There are a few section breaks where there's a natural place to take a few questions. So I'd love to, intermittently take some questions. And Kim, I will follow your lead on just to sort of flag me or chime in when those questions start coming in.
Sounds great. With that, we will let the webinar begin. Thanks, Ellen, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Kim, and I really appreciate the partnership with NACAC and many other child welfare and children's advocacy organizations, and have seen just such a shift over the last decade, really, to be more inclusive of and aware of the experiences of LGBT youth and families, and it's just been terrific to be kind of welcomed into the movement to keep our children safe and find permanent families. So we're going to cover some key elements of supporting LGBTQ youth, including focusing on youth in out-of-home care, and really emphasizing the three pillars of child welfare, safety, permanency, and well-being. And just to really help illustrate over the course of the hour ways in which these efforts for safety, permanency, and well-being might be different in certain ways for LGBTQ youth than they are for the broader population of youth. Certainly in many ways, youth need the same things, but because LGBTQ youth have faced specific kinds of experiences and often family rejection and different kinds of treatment while in care, they don't always have the same outcomes. And, our goal with this is to provide you with information and awareness and tools so that we can ensure, the best possible outcomes for LGBTQ youth. We're going to look at what their experiences are in out-of-home care. We're going to look at some of the sort of missteps and sometimes unintentional missteps that child welfare professionals and kinship families and adoptive families make with LGBT youth in care, and then really engaging you all to think about yourselves as allies and key people to support LGBT youth and really change the landscape. I know that everyone on the phone has a very different level of knowledge, baseline knowledge about working with the LGBTQ community and LGBTQ youth in particular. I just feel it's important to address some key concepts, some basic language and terminology, so that everybody is kind of moving forward with me on the same page, and to really be respectful that some of us have had a lot of experience in interaction, and others are really just opening up to this population or wanting to learn more. So key concepts to know and that you'll hear repeated over the course of the webinar: sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and the binary versus spectrum when we talk about gender and sexuality. And I'm going to explain what all these things are, so you don't have to worry that you're already behind the curve. We often will hear now in child welfare the term SOGI. A lot of county agencies, a lot of folks in child welfare are starting to use this term to refer to sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. That we talk about, these are parts of every human being has a sexual orientation, a gender identity, and a gender expression. So it's kind of a way to categorize these important parts of who we are that are important to, explore with young people, understand. They inform how we make referrals, what kind of placements will make sense, what their experiences have been, and what they need from us to be healthy and thrive. We'll also, kind of outside of that SOGI box, talk about ways in which sexual identity and gender identity develop, and understanding those concepts actually more outside of a box and thinking of them as kind of more broad and more fluid. Sexual orientation is quite simply really about who you're attracted to. When we talk about working with youth, there's often a slight difference between who they feel attracted to and who they're being sexual with, or whether they're being sexual at all. So it's really important to be open and not to make assumptions that if a young man that you work with is dating a girl, it doesn't necessarily mean he's heterosexual. He could be bisexual. He could have attraction to both young women and men. He also might actually be more attracted to men, but fearful of disclosing that and being out. So he's dating a girl to sort of pass as straight and not face some of the challenges that a lot of gay youth would face. But this is simply about who you're attracted to, whether or not you are acting on it, but it's a physical, romantic attraction to another person. These are the different ways we categorize sexual orientation. These last couple terms you probably are less familiar with. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, those are pretty common. People generally get what that means. Straight or heterosexual, and then asexual, people who really just do not have sexual attraction, and often are stigmatized around that, but it's just truly who they are. And then pansexual is a newer term that is actually a little bit more broad than bisexual. It refers to people who are not only attracted to both men and women at times, but women and men who are not necessarily gender conforming. So it's a little bit, there's a little bit more fluidity in there. Now, don't worry if you have no idea what I'm talking about. I promise that this will all make sense before too long. Gender identity is really very much between your ears. Gender identity is how you feel, your innermost concept of your gender, as either male or female, or in some cases, a little bit of both. It often, in most cases, your gender identity, the gender you feel between your ears, does in fact match the genitals you have between your legs. In most cases, for most of us, there's a congruence between the body we're born into and the identity we have. But for many people, that's not true, and that's where we'll talk about being transgender or gender expansive. But this is really a sense that people have inside of themselves. These are the gender identities that we tend to talk about: male and female, gender queer, which is I don't know if any of you, you probably work with teenagers or have teenagers or younger people in your lives. Genderqueer is becoming an identity of choice for a lot of young people. It really just means that they're not binary. They're not identifying 100% as male or 100% as female. Bigender is another way of saying, you know, I have components of both. I feel a little bit like both. And then agender is an assertion that young people have that they really just don't have a gender and they don't claim a gender. I was frankly a little surprised over time to hear how young people are identifying themselves. You know, I think of myself as pretty hip and pretty, you know, open-minded, and I think that is true, but I'm really having trouble keeping up with this new generation of young people who have a very different way of talking about themselves. And I've learned to just follow their lead and learn from them because they are certainly right about who they are. Gender expression is really how we tell the world what our gender is. So, you know, it could be your hairstyle, it could be the type of clothing and accessories you choose, it could be the way you carry yourself, your gestures. And again, everybody has a gender expression, and you know, often the way we express our gender does line up with our, you know, biological sex. But there's variations of this. I mean, some of you know me. You know, I'm, you know, a little bit more of a boyish girl, you know, and I was a tomboy, but I never grew out of it. So I'm, you know, I have some more what you would call traditionally masculine characteristics and that sort of thing. But I identify as female, and I never had a sense that I was transgender. It's just that I'm, you know, the way I express my gender is kind of more in the middle of the spectrum than on the purely female side or feminine side. These are some ways that we think about that. Masculine and feminine are, I think, what we typically think about when we think about gender expression. And then androgynous, folks who, you know, you're not always sure from looking at them. They have maybe some characteristics that could be male or female. And then butch is a word used to describe maybe somebody like me, who's a little bit more of a masculine woman, and femme, you know, more feminine in expression. I just want to sort of talk about the acronym LGBT. The LGB, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, that speaks just to sexual orientation. It does not tell you anything about somebody's gender identity or gender expression. It's just about who these letters that people often claim as their identity, it's just about who they're attracted to. The T is where we talk about gender identity and gender expression. And that's where I find people have a little bit more of a learning curve. So I'm just going to spend a couple extra minutes talking about the T and transgender and what that means. It means many things. It is really an umbrella term. You know, there are folks who transition from male to female and female to male. And if someone who was assigned male at birth was born and had male genitals, and the doctor said it's a boy, but experiences a real dysphoria with that, and it ultimately transitions, we would call her, or she might call herself, a trans woman or a transgender woman. And woman is the affirmed gender. And another way to say that sort of shorthand is male to female, a male to female transgender person. Similarly, a trans man is someone who was assigned female at birth. Some of you know maybe Chaz Bono, who some of us knew as Chastity Bono, watching the Sonny and Cher show when we were young. And I just dated myself, I think, as being on the older side. You know, Chaz was, you know, assigned female at birth, but had internally, you know, between the ears, as we said, felt male, and ultimately, in order to affirm who he is, transitioned, and he would call himself a trans man or a transgender man, or F2M as kind of a shortcut way of saying that. These three terms, genderqueer, androgynous, and gender fluid, kind of refer to people who aren't experiencing a sense that they need to transition from being assigned male to female or being assigned female to male, like Caitlyn Jenner or Chaz Bono, but they're folks who have non-conforming, kind of non-binary ways of expressing their gender. And there's a lot of room in there, and I think a lot of young people in particular are kind of placing themselves in here. So just to be aware of these terms and a sense of what that means, it's really a sense of feeling that you have both male and female parts of who you are. This is hard to sometimes understand when you're from a certain generation, because we have what we call these binary views of sexuality and gender that really guide a lot of the way we think, and we kind of carry this stuff to work sometimes. That if you're born male, you're going to feel male, you're going to look and act like a man, you're going to, walk through the world as a man and be attracted to women. And likewise, if you're born female, you're going to feel like a girl and then a woman, and you're going to act and look a certain way. You're going to be perceived by others as female, as a woman, and you're going to be attracted to men. These are kind of the expectations we have when kids are born. We often do, and we sometimes, I think, when we have a child, we almost see their life unfold sometimes. Oh, if I have a son, he's going to grow up, he's going to, be tall and strong, he's going to marry a woman, they're going to have kids. We kind of project a lot based on these binaries, I think even sometimes out of habit. And I think, again, having those expectations and making assumptions that's the path our kids take. Imagine if you're a kid who's lesbian, gay, bisexual, or who's transgender or genderqueer, that falling off of that binary path can, make it hard for family members to accept them or for them to feel valued and included, particularly in their family culture or community culture, when, again, the expectations are kind of along the binary. Another way to think of kind of the range of ways that young people would identify and express their sexuality and gender is to think of a continuum or a spectrum rather than these rigid paths of that I just showed you on that last slide. So typically you're male or female at birth. There's some variation to that. There are some people who are intersex, or they have characteristics of both, it's a hormonal thing, and you would have genital characteristics of both female and male. It's rare, but typically you're assigned male or female at birth. And then you either identify, on a spectrum, again, many people will identify in a way that's consistent with the sex assigned at birth, but it really is a spectrum, and it slides like if there were levers on these, like on old boom boxes where your bass and your treble and all that slides. You really could find people on very different parts of this spectrum. Don't think of folks being linear. And then sexual orientation, again, there are many people who are bisexual and some who are straight, only exclusively attracted to people of the opposite sex, folks who are exclusively attracted to folks of the same sex. I mean, there's a lot of in-between area there. So I'd like to give people to really think about this sort of fluidity and like the sliding back and forth, especially when you're talking with young people. Like there's a range of possibilities. This is a fun slide. I got introduced to this by young people, this genderbread person, where it's really showing that there are all kinds of possibilities and different ways that people identify. There are parts of us that are, there's maleness and femaleness. There's, different ways of being female and male. And that the sex is literally, if you see on the gingerbread person, the sex is really your natal sex, your biological sex that is, that you are assigned at birth. But there are all these other things that really make up who you're attracted to, and your identity comes from between your ears, and you express yourself in a myriad of ways that may or may not match your biological sex. So Kim, to your point, this is a good place to take questions just about these concepts and terms that I've shared so far. So I'll just wait a second and see if there are any questions about this part before I move on. And please don't be shy.
So Ellen, so far nobody has typed in any questions, but I have one for you.
Okay.
I think one of the things that stops people is that they are afraid to ask questions. And my sense is that probably one of the best things that we can do is to be genuinely and caringly inquisitive and let people tell us about who they are rather than make assumptions. Is this a
Yes.
good way to try to find out about folks?
Yes, it is, and I think many of us are not good at talking about or asking about things like attraction and sex and sexual behavior. Most of us didn't have that modeled very well for us in our families of origin, and we still struggle as mature, grown adults to have conversations like this. So, to your point, I think when you're working with a young person, meeting a young person for the same time, or just wanting to have a different kind of conversation as someone is reaching adolescence. You can ask questions like, do you feel any attraction to anyone? Any kids at school? Are you noticing, having any feelings? Have you, been sexually active with anyone? And if so, was it, a girl, a boy, or have you had experiences with both? You can, ask, how do you identify as, here's a really cool thing that a lot of folks are doing. They're drawing a scale that has male/masculine on one side and female/feminine on the other side with little dots along, and they're asking kids to just circle the dot on that spectrum that they think both describes how they feel about their gender. And sometimes you'll be really surprised that a young person will circle something that doesn't doesn't match what you see, but it creates a great opportunity to say, well, tell me more about that. What does that feel like? So absolutely open-ended questions, no assumptions. You don't ask a boy, do you have a girlfriend? You say, is there someone in your life? And those are ways that really convey that you are an open person, and that over time you would be perceived as that safe person they could share more with, because you have laid that groundwork to be open.
Great, thanks so much.
Sure.
A quick question also. I noticed that there is a spot here for handouts. Are those handouts that you want to point people to as we go through, or do we just want to make sure that folks see that they're there and grab them?
Yeah, some of them are noted on slides, and I'll just go through them quickly because they are all there for folks to download.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move. I've already spent way too much time on the introductory stuff, so I'm going to move much more quickly now through just a survey we did in 2012. We had over 10,000 young people from across the country who self-identified as LGBT respond to the survey. And to make this point I was making about following the lead of young people, about 1,000, almost 10% of those respondents identified either as transgender or wrote in their own gender identity, which again is really something to pay attention to when you talk about asking questions and trying to sort of assess and understand the young people you're working with or you're parenting. These are some of the words that show the diversity of how young people identify their gender. And just to get a sense of the possibilities, and again, to your point, Kim, not to label young people, but give them the space to label themselves. Because understanding the transgender experience is still something we're all working on, PFLAG has this great resource. It's a booklet called Guide to Being a Trans Ally. It's very accessible. It's really a great thing to read, to share with other people, so you can see that a website where you can download that particular resource. In that survey I mentioned of 10,000 youth, you can see here in the pie chart that the majority of the LGBT youth were actually bisexual. And this is true in the adult population as well. Very invisible population. Bisexual people, especially youth, are dismissed and made fun of, told to make a choice and get off the fence. Bisexual girls are harassed and sexually assaulted at much higher rates than both lesbian and straight women. So there's a lot of work to do to bring awareness and really legitimize bisexual sexuality as a very normal, healthy expression of one's sexual orientation. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to talk about some of the experiences of LGBT youth. I think many of you know bullying and harassment and family rejection are three of the things that most negatively affect LGBT youth. And it's really the reason they're overrepresented. Runaway homeless youth in foster care and in the juvenile justice system. And if you look at these percentages, much higher than we are actually represented in the population. And again, we tie that back to, sometimes there are these other underlying reasons why LGBT youth are on the street or in out-of-home care, but the family rejection is often there, and it is because of their LGBT status. And young people report this as the reason they either ran from their home or were forced out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's, these studies that just are heartbreaking about LGBT youth while in care facing further abuse, being re-traumatized. 100% of LGBT youth in group homes in this New York study reported verbal harassment. Many experienced physical violence. In many cases, the staff turn their heads or in some ways, kind of perpetuate some of the anti-LGBT sentiment. So they're just not safe while they're in care, and supposedly we're keeping them safe. So lots of young people reporting that they had bad experiences while in care. Just to talk about the three pillars and to sort of break it down this way, that we'll talk about what does safety, permanency, and well-being mean for LGBTQ youth, and in what ways is it different, and where we need to pay some more attention. I do this in person, I would say, what makes someone feel safe? And then you would tell me, but we're not doing that today. But what makes someone feel safe? They can be who they are. They're treated with respect. A safe to live. They are, safe from violence and both physical, emotional violence, etc. We know what our role is in ensuring safety is making sure they're with a safe parents, safe living situation, and these are, it's just a major focus for all of us in this field. We know that there are rights that foster youth have that sometimes when we're thinking about LGBTQ youth, and the more you hear over the next half hour about some of the unique experiences and challenges, it really ties back to some of their rights being not being applied the same way they might be applied to non-LGBT youth in care. Freedom of expression being a key one. Personal safety being a key one, as we do see very high levels of physical violence and harassment. This is just a few years old, this Massachusetts Youth Risk Behavior Study, just looking at kind of making the point a little further that I made about the impact of family rejection on the high number of youth on the street. The homeless students who filled out a survey in the state of Massachusetts, the majority who were homeless were also bisexual, lesbian, or gay. And they reported that family rejection, again, was the underlying reason. So this tells us a lot about the work we need to do to support families, especially when a young person comes out. A lot of families don't know how to respond. There's, if there are two parents in that family and they're not on the same page, it can cause a lot of conflict in the family. So I am going to spend more time talking about family support as a key component in well-being and permanency, obviously. So again, just bullying and harassment. This is LGBT students experience the highest rate of bullying and harassment in school. This study is done every other year, and even though we're making progress in terms of marriage equality and greater acceptance and visibility, young people are really not seeing a difference on the ground in the schools they go to and in the homes they grow up in. This was from a listening forum that the Child Welfare League of America did with LGBT youth across the country. They went to 6 different cities. And here's just, again, heartbreaking that this young person said, while in care, a staff person turned his head and blamed him for being beaten up because he was, quote unquote, a faggot. that I think is often a reflection of agencies not having clear policies, no tolerance of anti-LGBT bias and discrimination, and training for staff. Training for staff is so important, just to know how to intervene, why it's important, and becoming more of an ally to the LGBT community. And then, of course, sometimes you have to look at this as a job performance issue. If you have staff who are really hostile to the LGBT community and it's getting in the way of them doing their job to support youth, that becomes a performance issue or management issue. This is another rather staggering statistic. Among homeless youth, homeless LGBT youth, by far, family rejection because of their sexual orientation or gender identity is the main factor in them being homeless. They either ran or they were forced out. So that comprises the largest group of homeless LGBT youth. Now, there's another study, I don't have it in this slide deck, but when you then ask follow-up questions about why the family rejecting, many of the youth report that it was based in religious beliefs, more conservative religious beliefs. So again, a lot of work to do to help people open their hearts more and think about the harm they're causing children, and not feel like they have to choose between a religious doctrine and their child, that there's really a lot of in-between area to connect to. Safety concerns in care, I think I've probably made this point very well, but looking at the higher, high numbers of LGBT youth who, once in care, have disruptions with foster placements. Sometimes the foster family they're placed with is actually rejecting them as well around their LGBT identity. A lot of harassment in group homes. This is a big problem. And being treated poorly in foster care. This LA study, which is actually very recent, the data just came out. Higher number of LGBT youth report being treated poorly in foster care than non-LGBT peers. Talk a little bit about safety in the context of education, because a lot of anti-LGBT bullying and harassment happens in the school. We want to make sure that parents and caregivers and other adult providers for our children have their finger on the pulse of what's happening at school. They know what the child's rights are at school. They can advocate for them. They can look at what kind of anti-bullying policies they have, what kind of interventions they have. But certainly our students have the right to be safe at school and be able to achieve academically and have the same opportunities. When you look at the school to prison pipeline, it's probably a term you have heard or hearing more of. LGBT youth are much more likely to have harsh disciplinary treatment. There's some stories where, a young person who is gay or lesbian or perceived to be LGBT was constantly bullied, nobody intervened, and then at some point they just hit their breaking point and they fight back, and then they are more harshly punished. Among those, their higher number are kids of color. So we're also looking at sort of higher than entry into detention or juvenile justice. And there are some resources I'll share with you later about some of the efforts specifically to better address within the juvenile justice system some of the inequities that our LGBT youth face. Freedom of expression, we talked about this a lot. Again, honoring who our kids say they are, calling them by their pronouns, letting them dress, not inappropriately, but if someone who's male identified wears some clothing that is more, feminine, that's fine, right? But a lot of young kids get punished and treated poorly based on how they dress or how they present themselves. And LGBTQ youth often are, sort of told you essentially cannot be who you are and express yourself the way that feels authentic. I want to just quickly talk about conversion therapy. It is a big no-no. Several states have passed laws that actually make illegal any type of quote-unquote conversion therapy of minors. That is New Jersey, Illinois, California so far, and there are a number of others that are looking at this. Tremendous damage has been done to young people, just incredibly traumatizing. It's been debunked by all of these very legitimate mainstream organizations, and even some of our, the folks who had claimed for years that they were successfully converting people have come out and said that it is in fact ineffective, and they've apologized. So I mean, I think we have quite the consensus there, and no youth should ever be subjected to any kind of change therapy, conversion therapy, whether it's with a professional or with a member of clergy or anybody else, where the effort is to change who they are. It does tremendous damage. Talk a little bit about, I'm actually going to skip this, I'm sorry, but I want to, I will make this available to you. I'll say that some of the highest rates of HIV infection are among 13 to 24-year-old males, mostly African American, who are having sex with other males. That's where the highest rate of new infections are among youth, 13 to 24. So we are clearly missing the boat in terms of educating young people around sexual health, how to protect themselves. If we're talking just about pregnancy prevention or abstinence, not only is it not realistic for most heterosexual kids, but it's totally missing the boat with anything relevant for kids who are having mostly same-sex attraction and sexual behavior. So this is a great download. This is for particularly for younger people who want to understand HIV and what to do if they are diagnosed HIV positive, and how to be more in control of your health. And we talk about permanency. I think you all know why permanency is important and what we mean by that, so I'll just skip this. Safe and affirming environment where you can either disclose your sexual orientation and gender identity, or come in already, be placed in a safe home already out as an LGBT person. We need, I think a lot of agencies can look at very specific permanency efforts that could enhance outcomes for this particular population, and learn some new ways to talk to young people. A lot of LGBT youth in care are afraid to be out because they think it will make it less likely for them to be placed or chosen, and they will sometimes hide who they are. And of course, we know on the other side of that, the impact of hiding who you are takes a tremendous toll on your emotional well-being, and at some point, who you are is going to be known, and then the fear that they're not going to be in a safe, affirming home. So we really want to encourage young people to explore that, to think about the possibilities of being who they are, and also being loved and supported and cared for by adults. This is a handout that you'll find. This is a great thing to give to parents who might have LGBT youth, or just even for parents with a 3-year-old who aren't even thinking about that, to just be kind of ahead of the curve in terms of how important it is to be supportive if a young person comes out. This is a great resource, a place of respect, that is specifically about how to support transgender and gender nonconforming youth in group home facilities, group care facilities, which is where a lot of really the worst experiences are occurring for transgender youth. Here's some questions. This is getting a little bit more into practice now. So a lot of folks really don't have a particular protocol for how they assess whether resource families, both those coming through pre-service training as well as those already licensed, what's their capacity to parent an LGBT young person? We don't have a set of questions that's sort of universally asked. We sometimes don't even talk about the fact that some of our young people are LGBT and what our expectations or hopes for them are. So we can, in fact, be placing LGBT youth with licensed families that have for whom we have no idea what they're really able to do and willing to do. And I think these are some questions that can mirror the kinds of questions you might ask when you're placing a child of a different race, where you don't sort of ignore the fact that this, white couple is going to adopt a child of color, that you actually ask them questions to help understand what some of the needs of the child might be, and how it might stretch them as a parent, and how they can get support and resources. So I have a similar approach. If you some basic questions you can be asking, or things you could be thinking about, that give you the information you need and help to really identify where those safe and affirming families are going to be. Interested and willing to parent an LGBT youth. Really separating out lesbian, gay, bisexual from transgender, because again, a lot of folks will have a very different comfort level or knowledge level when you talk about gender identity and what it means to be transgender than they do about just the, understanding that, a kid might have same-sex attraction, and that would be fine, but being transgender is out of their, really out of their knowledge area. What it means to be questioning, a young kid who is exploring and not sure, and how would you support that young person? Here's a very simple way to ask the question. If someone chooses, any of these, I would say following up with, if yes, tell me about why you chose yes, and do you have you have friends or family members who are LGBT? What do you think would be most important for supporting an LGBT youth? If they say no, maybe ask a few follow-up questions just to get a sense of whether it's a no because they'd be scared that they wouldn't do well, or if it's no because they actually are kind of very homophobic, in which case you want to circle that no with a red pen and make sure that you remember that. And then maybe not sure could be, well, I don't know what resources exist in the community, or I'm not sure how to talk about these issues. So that family or that person could actually be educated and moved along to be an affirming family at some point. This is just another way to kind of expand on those questions. And, it's about willingness versus, really being welcoming and supportive. Because a lot of folks might be willing, but it doesn't mean that they would really be ready and feel competent. They might have some people in their family, extended family, that are not very LGBT friendly. So, you can explore those middle area questions. If someone at this, this last question, I would be happy to. That's someone who I would say seems very affirming and not conflicted. And those are the folks I think that are going to bubble up as the best possible placements for your LGBT youth. And asking the same questions about transgender youth, again, separating out. And some folks might need a little education about, well, I don't really understand transgender, what it really means. Can I learn more? I think that I would be open, but I just don't really know what that would mean for me. So again, separating out the needs of transgender youth, or youth who are not gender conforming. And another kind of set of questions here. The last two, I think, are really give you a lot of good information, again, because somebody might be willing, but they don't have information. They don't really know much about LGBT youth. Will they make the extra effort like they would if, they had a child that's just going to need any extra support around anything? Agencies offer ongoing training, education, support groups. Would you be willing to do that? That also raises the question of, are you connected to agencies? Do you have agencies in your networks that are able to provide that support? Do you know where the resources would be if a family counselor who is LGBT affirming, who you could refer to in your community? Would it be wise to have a support group for parents of LGBT youth, just to build up the opportunities for support, education, and connection? Now we're going to shift a bit to well-being. This is well, it's a quote I like. I wouldn't say it's one of my very favorites, but I like this one. Just the importance of loving ourselves, embracing ourselves. LGBT youth, really need and want and deserve to love themselves for who they are, for who they love and who they're attracted to, and how they express their gender. But unfortunately, many of the adults around us are not loving us for that, and in fact, they are rejecting us for that. And we're going to talk again in a little more depth here. Actually, let me just pause, see if there are, I feel like I'm talking very quickly, and I didn't have that much coffee today. So Kim, do we want to just see if there are a couple of questions that might have popped up for people in the last 15 minutes or so?
So yes, we did have an earlier question that had not come to me right away from one of our NACAC board members who was asking about the term two-spirited, which I know often comes up in the Native American and Aboriginal communities.
Yeah.
Wanted to know if you hear about that. And I have a second.
Sure.
Have you adapted any of these tools for assessing foster care adoptive placements to be used in assessing placements with extended family or relatives of children removed from their parents' care, which I guess, as you think about it, very pertinent, especially when you're thinking about kids who have been rejected by family and have ended up in the system, and now potential relatives are there to step in.
Yeah. So the first question, I'll start with the two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term that is used in some Native American communities, tribal communities, not all. I've actually learned the hard way by sometimes using that in presentations and being educated in a very positive way by people who are much more connected in tribe and Native communities. Said that it's not a term that's embraced sort of universally. There are dozens of different communities we're talking about, different cultures, and that what it means is two-spirit refers to people who have who are gay or lesbian typically, or gay, lesbian, bisexual. And in some cultures, there is some embrace of that. It's seen as like a positive attribute, if you will. But not in all communities, and there's anti-LGBT sentiment, in a number of tribal communities, but it originated in. I'm not sure exactly what the origin is, but it had been said for many years that Native American / American Indian communities preferred that term when talking about LGBT people. I just don't want to. I don't assume that, and I wouldn't use that term unless somebody else used it as a way to describe themselves.
Thank you.
In terms of, I think some of the questions that I shared in the earlier slides that just give you a sense of, whether, let's say there's an uncle or an aunt or cousin who wants to foster or adopt a child who was rejected by their parents or more immediate family members because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. I mean, in addition to all the, the routine stuff you would do, some of the questions about, do you have the knowledge and resources you need to support an LGBT young person? Do you know where in your community you can find support or connection? Are there concerns about the kid's safety? I mean, how, would other family members who have maybe not great intentions have access to them? What kind of boundaries would there be? And the other thing that I think is important here, and that's not a full answer to your question. I think the other really important thing to mention is that a lot of families that are initially rejecting, like even fairly like hostile, like get out of my house kind of rejecting, many of them move along, they evolve. I'm sure many of us can think of things that really upset us or scared us or made us mad 3 years ago, and we don't feel the sting of it, or we've moved along. And I think sometimes we might give up too soon. I know the kids did give up because their parents hurt them so badly. They do feel like they have to leave, and that's the only way they can be safe and be who they are. But as professionals, we find that if there's any way to maintain a connection, if there's, say, one parent, maybe not both, but one really wants to maintain the connection, is there a way you can help them stay connected? Is there a place they can meet outside of the home? Is there a place in your agency, say the mom can come talk with her son, even though the father doesn't want to lay eyes on his son anymore? And as you educate parents, and as parents start to feel their own pain and loss, many of them do find some reconciliation, and they become maybe not celebrating and waving rainbow flags about having a gay kid, but able to be accepting and available and help to keep them safe. So we really don't want to assume that if the initial reaction was very negative that you've lost that parent. I think it's our role to try to cultivate them as supportive adults over time. It's often possible. I think there's nothing. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just thanking you. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
sure.
sorry. There's one more question.
Sure.
It just came in. How would you help a teenager who has admitted to struggling with his sexual identity or orientation, but does not want to talk about it?
Well, you can ask if do you not want to talk about it with me? Is there someone else or some other place where you'd feel more comfortable talking about it? Do you want to connect with folks at like an LGBT community center, or do you want to look online with me and just maybe see if there's some things to read that might be helpful for you to read? Is there something that scares you when you think about having same-sex attraction? Like, what comes up for you? Are you afraid that you would be, rejected by family? There were religious teachings that the person can't reconcile? I think asking some of those questions could help. I think saying, and maybe more importantly to say, anytime you are ready, I'm here to talk, and I will support you and love you no matter what your sexual orientation is. I think those things are pretty important to say.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, a lot of kids are going to test us to see if we're safe people for them. And so just being open is important. I think, think about what you say in your everyday conversations. Are there anti-gay words used in your home? Have you said negative things, or have you brought a young person to maybe a church that where negative things are said about people who are gay? Like, think about what kind of messages are landing with young people, and that's going to give you a pretty good sense of why they would be fearful. And some young people just are afraid that they're not going to have, a sort of quote-unquote happy, normal life. We know that's not true, and I think being able to show them that path forward and, look for role models and that sort of thing can be very helpful. But just to speak a little bit about coming out, I know I'm going to run out of time. I think the point of talking about this is to think about how important it is to sort of say the right kinds of things when a young person comes out. They don't come out one time. I mean, I've had to come out in my life, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of times, sometimes every day in some way. People make assumptions, or, they'll ask about having a husband or whatever it is. And, it's, people do have to come out. You come out at work, you come out at school. If we go back to family rejection here, this is from the great work of Dr. Caitlin Ryan and the Family Acceptance Project, with suicide attempts for kids who've been rejected by their families with very low rejection, like, not throwing them out of the house, but just, I don't really get this, this is, just, I don't like this. The kids are like 1 time more likely to have a suicide attempt. With moderate rejection, you disgust me kind of stuff. Being gay is a sin, probably twice as likely to attempt suicide. But highly rejecting, like, you're not my son anymore, get out of my house, almost 9 times more likely to to attempt suicide. Sorry about that. Same, with illegal drug use. Slightly more likely with low rejection, 1.5 times more likely with moderate rejection, but 3.5 times more likely with high levels of rejection. When foster parents and, kinship families see these kinds of statistics, even if in their hearts they are really struggling with being accepting, they can start to see how their role and what they say and what they do is directly tied to well-being of their children, to the survival of their children. HIV infection. Again, the higher the levels of rejection, the more likely these kids are going to be HIV positive. Well, why? Because they're running away, or they're being thrown out. They might trade sex for survival sex, be sex workers, or just, really not care enough about themselves to use protection. So we see that family response is key. Where there's high levels of family acceptance, you see, happy LGBT adults. And it just, it decreases, that level of happiness decreases with families that are not accepting at all. And this is families of origin, it's foster adoptive families. It's the people who are taking care of you. If they reject who you are, those are the outcomes you're going to have. So when a young person comes out, you might have an initial reaction like, oh man, I can't do this, or I can't believe it, or no way. But you have to just kind of hold that internally and really think about the first words you say. Important to say, thank you for telling me. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me that. I care about you. I need to learn. This is coming as a little bit of a surprise, but I'm here. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get through it. Don't tell anybody else. Breaking confidentiality can actually really put the young person at risk. Ask if they've told anybody else, but really think about that first reaction is so key. Rejecting behavior. Oh, I know we have to stop, but let me see here. Rejecting accepting behavior.
Ellen, while you're deciding, Ellen?
Yep.
I have scheduled for myself that we can go until 2:15 if people want to stay on the line. I do want to ask you, I just got an important question from someone who's parenting a child.
Okay.
She lives in Virginia. They're having an ongoing debate lately on which restroom a transgender child should use in the public school system. They have children in elementary school that have identified as transgender, and they are asking you, do you believe that a child should have separate restroom facilities or be able to use the restroom of the gender that they identify with?
Right, great. Well, first of all, I should say that these bathroom battles are playing out in school districts around the country, and the Title IX, the way that Title IX is interpreted by law, will guarantee the right of transgender students to use the bathroom of what we call their affirmed gender identity. School districts are getting sued when they're not accommodating. So often what happens is, depending on the logistics of the school, the structure of the school, the budget of the school, they might have to, on a short-term basis, and just until the community is educated and they know that student is safe, they might suggest that they use the teacher's bathroom or the nurse's bathroom, again, just to keep them safe. It is not ideal because it does stigmatize the young person. So more schools are, but they might need a little bit of time to, it's usually some parents who are scared, they don't understand this, they say, there's no way your child can use the bathroom, and the principal doesn't know what to do, and it has to play out a little bit. It's a great opportunity to educate people and to break down the myths and misperceptions about what it means to be transgender. But what I believe and what the law is saying is that if a transgender girl should use the girls' bathroom. You go into a stall, you lock the door, it's private. Everybody has to pee. There are some transgender kids who literally are having to hold their pee all day. It is just ridiculous. And the person in Virginia, I'm in the DC area. You're welcome. My email will be up at the end. You're welcome to contact me, and there might be some resources locally that can help support your child, and thank you for being supportive. So rejecting behaviors are any and all of these. Sometimes you'll hear, this is a sin, you'll be punished, you won't let your kid out of the house because you don't want him to be hanging with LGBT friends, asking them to keep a secret, and of course just physical or verbal violence. Accepting behaviors look more like this. A little bit of what we talked about. Talk with them about who they are, being supportive. you know, even when you're uncomfortable, just supporting who they are. Go online, learn, read, educate yourself for sure. Advocating, like the Virginia parent. If there's an issue with not using the right bathroom or being bullied at school, advocate for them. That's super important. Make sure that extended family members and people in your close network are supportive. You know, and again, sometimes it's education. Welcome your LGBT young person to have their friends or a girlfriend or boyfriend come home the same way you would. I mean, a lot of young people said, well, my parents let my brother's girlfriend come over, but they won't let me have my boyfriend, you know, and these sort of double standards. That happens in out-of-home care as well, or in group care, where, you know, you're told that you basically can't date or have any kind of social life because you're LGBT, but your straight peers are able to do that, and, you know, it's really a double standard applied. I was just actually saying this. So the, you know, peer support systems, LGBT youth need and should have peer support. Ideally, they'd have peer support from non-LGBT youth who are in their community, but sometimes those youth are bullies and they're not kind. So they need to have access to peer support, wherever that comes from. The same opportunity as their non-LGBT peers to date, to learn about relationships and boundaries and having agency over their body and HIV prevention, same opportunities to have healthy dating and to be supported in that. This is, you know, just a quote from a young person, again illustrating what I said, that they're just often cut off from having any kind of healthy romantic sort of dating as teenagers. And, you know, we know, you know, by 15, 16, sometimes 17, our kids are dating. And, you know, it's sort of a rite of passage that sometimes LGBT folks are not able to participate in. This is another quote, just, you know, from a caseworker, from folks who are doing the work that many of us are paid to do, saying, you know, no, you cannot, you know, you cannot have a girlfriend here. And it's often not consistent with agency policy. It's often, you know, one person's individual bias or fear or just really not knowing what to do. And it's, you know, that's where some of that mistreatment and further alienation takes place. A lot of what we talked about with family rejection, you know, the putting the kids at risk for being depressed and using drugs. My hunch is that if it's the social worker who is the caring adult in your life who's rejecting you or shutting down who you are, it's going to have a similar impact, maybe not as powerful and profound as your parents rejecting you, but certainly adults kind of shutting down who you are, that's going to take a toll. So we, as caregivers who might not be parents, need to think about that too. And just around religion, some LGBT people have really been harmed by religious doctrine that tells them that, you know, it's sinful to be gay or lesbian, or, you know, they're an abomination. And so there's some trauma that comes from that if they've been exposed to that. And so when you're placing LGBT youth in families that have some kind of religious community, really enforce that young people need to be able to sort of choose to some extent how they want to express their faith, if at all. It's also really important to know that many LGBT people are religious and want to be part of a religious community, but just need to find one that is affirming and supportive. It's not really black and white that we're, you know, rejecting of religion. It's really finding a religious home, a spiritual home that welcomes who we are. So here's, you know, kind of one way that this might unfold. Our family is Jewish. We go to temple every week. If you want to be in this family, you'll follow the teachings of our faith and attend services with us. That's, you know, really squashing someone's freedom. This is a better approach. We're Jewish and we go to temple every week. We do it as a family. We consider you're part of your family, so you're welcome to join us. But if there's a different, you know, religious congregation you want to attend, then we'll be happy to help you get there. And, again, this would depend on the age of a child. If a child is 7 or 8, this may not be as applicable, but, someone who's older and who's come with some connection to a religious tradition that they don't want to lose, that is a more affirming tradition, it's, I think, in the child's best interest to help them keep that connection. This is a resource. I don't know if I sent this one along, but at the end you'll see where there's a link to more resources. This is really about your rights. I can't tell you how many young people have said, no one ever told me about my rights. And LGBT youth specifically, what are your rights as an LGBT youth? So this is a great document to have and to give to LGBTQ young people and to the folks who are fostering and supporting them, so that it's very clear that you honor their rights, you recognize their rights, and it's all toward ensuring their well-being. I did send this handout along. This is really building on the work I showed you of like the impact of family rejection. Caitlin Ryan has developed resources and tools. So this is a brief that is written for both for providers who work with families, as well as families and advocates and caretakers. The importance of supporting their LGBT children, looks a little bit at her research, looks a little bit about what we know when there's support in terms of emotional well-being and academic success and all those other things that are so important. So highly recommend that. Any questions so far? I'm almost through the slides. I'm going to go quickly through the rest. But
keep going, Ellen. We don't have any new ones right now.
Okay. So in terms of folks who are working as professionals in child welfare, we all come at this with different backgrounds and experiences and belief systems. Some of us may be hesitant to work with LGBTQ youth because of things our families of origin, things we've learned, or at church, or at synagogue, or just in our own communities that might not be very affirming or supportive of LGBT youth. So the hesitancy can be shifted to more of a real commitment to work with LGBT youth, to work well with them in an affirming way. And we're going to look at some of the unique challenges. Sometimes you're in an agency where there's not universal support for working with the LGBT community. Sometimes the leadership is not really committed and clear about the expectations. Sometimes you really just don't have the knowledge and information you need to do it well, to be a good ally, to be a good support person. Some misconceptions. How could a 12-year-old know she's gay or lesbian? How could an 8-year-old know that they're transgender and that they want to transition from female to male or male to female? And then you just kind of dismiss it and don't take it seriously. A young person who maybe is dressing in a way that's not gender conforming, and you say, oh, that person just wants attention, they're being dramatic. Again, kind of dismissing it as a really important part of their identity. Separating LGBT youth, the idea that you separate them for their own safety, well, maybe you're really separating them because you don't want to do the work of making sure that they're safe in a more desegregated house or community, or that you don't want to really have to work with LGBT youth. A transgender young person, you might just refuse to call them by their affirmed name. You might say, look, your birth certificate says John, so I'm not calling you Julie, I'm calling you John, which is, again, just devastating to a transgender person. And sometimes you can't get your legal documents changed so easily or so quickly. You might have a sense that you don't have families in your licensed families who would even consider supporting a transgender young person, and that's going to mean that young person's going to stay, going to be, in care for a longer period of time, or maybe placed in a residential placement for lack of other options. I mean, LGBT youth are overrepresented in residential placements that they really didn't need clinically, but it's because folks gave up on them. So some best practices. Think about your own beliefs that might be impacting your ability to be an excellent support person. make sure you know. Like it is. There's no question that some of the youth in your care, in your family, in your world are LGBTQ, whether you know it yet or they know it yet. There's no question that that's going to be true. Educate yourself. There are documents I've shared. There's a ton of stuff online. Make sure you respect privacy and confidentiality. This is key. If a young person is going to share something with you, they need to trust you, and you need to hold that really thoughtfully, and only share it when it's really connected to a safety, permanency, or well-being concern, but certainly not gossiping or just carelessly sharing that information. Words matter a lot. I'm going to close with this, kind of going back to all the words and terminology I introduced early on. You don't assume, again, like the whole, do you have a boyfriend, do you have a girlfriend, sort of be more open-ended. You can ask kids how they feel about themselves, or as male or female, or a little of both. You can ask them to draw that, and depending on their age, to use like things where you check off versus using words to explain. Always ask if you're not sure. You might see a young person who's very androgynous, and you're not sure what their gender is. You can ask. People would be really happy to tell you and feel like that was actually very respectful. This is a terrific document, guidelines for managing information related to SOGI, where there's a whole debate in child welfare about what to ask and when to ask, and if it's going to ever be an ask card, and I'm advocating yes, but it's going to be a while. And so in your own agencies, in your own systems, when you are assessing the sexual orientation and gender identity of young people, where do you record that? Is it, where do you have to exercise care and caution around recording information and sharing information? This is a great resource, and you can download it at the Center for the Study of Social Policy, which is the organization listed on the bottom right of the image. I don't think I sent that to you. I apologize for that. And then finally, know the supports in your community. Is there a youth center, LGBT community center, experts working with LGBT youth? Are there middle schools or high schools that have gay-straight alliances, which are like clubs for both gay and straight kids to come together and support each other? Make sure that any providers you refer to are competent, with mental health provider, job training, any referrals you're making, really look at whether they're competent. I sent this booklet to you, which is a great thing to keep on your desk. It's just basics for working with LGBTQ. It's about 30 pages. It's an excellent resource to have in your office or to give to parents and providers. Be an ambassador. Address anti-LGBT name calling. Address any kind of off-putting language. And don't be silent. Really step up. Be an upstander, not a bystander. And I think I'm going to just stop there because of the time. And I'm going to go right here. Sorry about this. Don't get dizzy. I'm almost done. And we are here. So these are this is where you'll find a lot more resources, that many of which I mentioned. You'll find out about the programs we have at HRC's All Children, All Families initiative to help agencies become more LGBT inclusive, and a lot of resources for supporting LGBT youth.
Ellen, I just have to thank you. This has been a great presentation, and I have to say that our audience has stayed with us even past the hour. There's an individual who was asking about receiving a certificate. Please email me at kimstevens@nacac.org. KIMSTE.
Isn't that you?
That's me. I'm going to send a certificate to this person that needs
one. Okay.
More questions. Ellen has very generously said that she is available for people to get in touch with her. I encourage you to do so. She's an incredible resource, completely passionate and brilliant on this subject. Several people have asked several times about being able to get the resources, being able to get the PowerPoint and listen to the webinar. All of that will be posted at the Advocates for Families First website, and we will be sending out an email to everybody who registered. So even folks that were not able to attend will get that email to be able to link up and hear these things. Just fabulous, and thank you. We really appreciate what you've done for us today. Have a great afternoon, folks.
Thank you.
And continue
Thanks,
to
everyone.
do good work for your kids.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.